if you want. Good morning. Welcome to the First Unitarian Society. My name is Jim Fody, and I serve this congregation as your assistant sabbatical minister. Today I'm joined by one of your senior co-ministers, Kelly Asprooth-Jackson, and the worship team of Linda Warren, Drew Collins, and Daniel Carnes. Special welcome and thanks to the Solstice Harp Ensemble for their contribution of time and talent this morning, and for showing us why the harp is the official instrument of heaven. At First Unitarian Society, we question boldly, listen humbly, grow spiritually, act courageously, and love unapologetically. If you are visiting us today, welcome. We are so very glad you are here. If you would like more information about First Unitarian Society, please stop by the welcome table located in the Commons, and we hope you're able to stay and join us for coffee hour immediately after the service, also out in the Commons. This morning, we have an announcement for this service. Our Moses Ministry team is hosting a talk this morning by Mark Rice of Wisdom, the statewide community organizing network of which we are a part. His talk will be immediately after this service in the Landmark Auditorium, and his topic will be transformational justice. Another announcement related to today, the Beverages and Banter event that I am hosting is actually today from 2 to 4 at Barrique's Coffee Shop. There have been a couple of dates floating around, so we want to make sure everyone knows it's today. You're all invited. You won't all fit, but you're all invited. For those connecting with us virtually today, we are glad you are with us as well, and we hope you will be able to take a moment to watch the announcement slides after the service to learn about upcoming programs and activities. We are in the midst of our annual stewardship campaign here at FUS, and today's service includes a special ritual to bless the pledges of financial support made to support our congregation in the year ahead. Shortly before our children depart for their classes, you'll all be invited to come forward to the vessels here in front. Some of you brought pledge forms you've already completed with you. We'll be so grateful to receive those. There are also forms available at the entrances and with the ushers if you are all set and ready to make a pledge and didn't happen to bring your form with you. If you already sent in your pledge, or you're just not ready to make a commitment today, or you're brand new here and you have no idea what all I'm talking about, please do still come forward. Kelly and I would like everyone to leave today with a gift from the congregation, a building block which you can choose to take home with you, or use to build something with others at the round tables in the Commons after the service. Finally, and this is for everyone, but especially for our children and young people, a pledge is a promise that we make to each other. And in this community, we make a lot of different promises for how we'll care for and support our congregation. So on those little pledge slips you can find at the entrances to the auditorium, there's a space where you can write down something you want to promise to do to care for our community this year. Maybe it's about participating in your class or being welcoming to new visitors. And if you'd prefer to draw a picture of your promise, rather than writing it down with words, there's a whole big blank back on each of these slips for you to do just that. So you've got a little time to think and write and draw if you'd like to. And now I invite everyone to join me in a moment of silence to center ourselves and bring ourselves fully into this time as we join together again in community. We are here to derive meaning in our actions. When we change, the world changes.
We are here to win our power back over our areas of powerlessness. When we change, the world changes.
We are here to deepen our understanding of ourselves in order to strengthen self-discipline. When we change, the world changes.
We are here to abolish prejudice with an appreciation for our diversity and differences. When we change, the world changes.
We are here to feel our personal power and our capacity to affect the lives of other people. When we change, the world changes.
We are here to become teachers to each other. When we change, the world changes.
We are here to spend time away from the usual influences and relearn reality. When we change, the world changes.
When God gives us the desire, we are also given the power and means to achieve our goals. When we change, the world changes.
We are here to see that our singular lives are a gateway to countless possibilities.
And now I invite you to rise in all the ways that we do, and join me in the words of aspiration for the kindling of our chalice flame. May this flame, symbol of transformation since time began, fire our curiosity, strengthen our wills, and sustain our courage as we seek what is good within and around us. And now I invite you to turn to those around you and greet each other with signs of love and peace.
Good morning. Let's sing together our opening hymn, number 100. I've got peace like a river. I've got peace like a river. I've got peace like a river. I've got peace like a river in my soul. I've got peace like a river. Joy like a fountain. I've got joy like a fountain. I've got joy like a fountain. I've got joy like a fountain in my soul. I've got joy like a fountain. I've got joy like a fountain. I've got joy like a fountain in my soul. I've got love like an ocean. I've got love like an ocean. I've got love like an ocean. I've got love like an ocean in my soul. I've got love like an ocean. I've got love like an ocean. I've got love like an ocean in my soul. I've got pain like an arrow. I've got pain like
Our congregation, make sure it's on. Okay, good. Our congregation is based in a reverence for the truth, bound together by the principle of free thought and the pursuit of a life of integrity. Much has changed in the 145 years we have been here, but this much has not. For decades before any of us were born, people who never knew us and never will gave the work of their hands and the coins in their pockets to build this spiritual community and to pass it on to us. Today is a day when we renew our responsibility to be its stewards for one more year. Let all of our giving come from our gratitude and our hope. Now, in a moment, we're going to hear a little bit of music, and as the music plays, I'm going to invite everyone to come forward to one of the two vessels, either the one next to me or the one next to Jim, and deposit that slip that you may or may not have in the vessel, right? Because some of you brought ones from home today, great, you can put that in here. Some of you got some when you came in today, great, you can put that in here. Some of you didn't do either of those things, and maybe you're grabbing one from an usher right now, that's fantastic. Some of you aren't gonna have a slip when you get up here. Some of you are brand new and are like, what are you talking about? This is my first time. Everybody, please, come forward, because whether you have a slip to deposit in the vessel or not, we really do want to make sure that you get a Lego, either to take home as a keepsake or to contribute to a construction project in the Commons after the service. So please do come forward, especially children and young people. I hope you come up and get a Lego from me. So, with that having been said, let us now come forward and share our gifts. Pick a good one. Good morning, Lynn. Money is made out of work. It is made possible by more work from parents and teachers and friends and partners and strangers. Now this money is pledged to make possible the work of this congregation. May this house be blessed in the receiving of it, and may the hands and minds and all the people who made the making of it possible be blessed in the giving. Amen. And now we will sing our children to their classes.
Oh, you can make the world so bright, and you can turn the day from night, and share your gifts and spread your light, and learn what you know. Now let's turn in our teal hymnals to number 1010, We Give Thanks. Let's rise in body and or in spirit. Give thanks for this precious day, for all gathered here and those far away, for this time we share with love and care. Oh, we give thanks for this precious day. Let's sing that one more time. Oh, we give thanks for this precious day, for all gathered here and those far away, for this time we share with love and care. Oh, we give thanks for this precious day.
The world is loud. The part of our planet that most human beings live on, the top surface of the Earth's crust, is full of noise. The sounds of wind and water, of animals moving about and calling to each other, the innumerable sounds created by human beings and all of our artifice. However, out beyond our planet's atmosphere, into the vast gaps between the stars, which compose most of the cubic footage of the cosmos, it is a different story. Waves and particles still fly about. It is beautifully, mysteriously complicated up there. But the human ear is evolved for our environment down here, such that there is very little for us to literally hear out in space. In a sense, the world is loud, but the universe is quiet. So now, in order that we might commune for a time with that vast cosmic silence, let us spend this moment together, resting in reverent quiet. Amen. This month, our spiritual theme is transformation, and it is specifically about transformation change into something new that I want to talk to you today. 2 weeks ago, my focus was on how transformation can be a way of maintaining and preserving something that we cherish. I talked with you about the Japanese concept of tokowaka and how intentionally replacing over time every component that makes up a thing can be the most effective way to make sure that thing can last indefinitely. Last week, our subject was math. And based on the number of you who asked me after the service, what was the central message of that reflection meant to be? I will own that it was something of a digression. If you know me, you know that I love a good digression. But I did have a connection in mind to our larger spiritual theme, how an incredibly basic question like, how many of that thing are there over there, led human beings over millennia to discover deep and complex truths about numbers and their interactions, and how grasping those truths has helped us to better understand the universe we inhabit and given us concepts that undergird the whole of modern science and industry. So that the most basic, practical wonderings of our prehistoric ancestors led to a cascade of inquiry that eventually transformed the world into the one we presently inhabit. So that first week was encouraging us to expand our imagination of what transformation might mean and entertain the seeming contradiction of transformation as preservation. The second was more of a practical example of a process of transformation on a grand scale. Today, I want to focus on transformation in its most familiar, conventional sense. How a thing, a creature, a person, a community, an idea changes from what it previously was into something profoundly different and new. And how even when this happens, for things that we are deeply attached to, like the society in which we live, the people and places we love, and our very own bodies and selves, that change can still be a force for good. So, what's so great about transformation? I'm going to give you 4 answers today. Here we go. 1, transformation can be a means to survive. Deep below the surface of the ocean, in the waters of Southeast Asia, between Malaysia and the Philippines, there lives a type of animal called a blue bell tunicate. I say that it's an animal, but it has a lot of the qualities that we usually associate with plants here on land. It stays rooted in one place, it can't really move of its own volition, and it doesn't even actually have a brain, in fact. The tunicates cluster together in clumps, clinging to rocks, swaying back and forth with the motion of the waters that surround them, filtering and eating tiny animals out of those waters, and looking, for all the world, a bit like translucent undersea versions of the bluebell flowers that give them their name. Now, this is a little weird, but it's par for the course weird in the odd world of the ocean. Things can get pretty strange down there. But what is particularly fascinating about the bluebell tunicate is that it belongs to a whole family of unmoving, brainless filter feeders who go through an entire phase of life in which they A, move, B, have brains, and C, do not feed by filtering the water. The tunicate begins, like so many other creatures, as an egg. But before it becomes the next best thing to an underwater carnivorous plant, it goes through a larval stage. It hatches out of its egg as something that looks almost identical to a tadpole. It has a bulbous little head and an eye and a tail for swimming around with, and the very most rudimentary form of a spine and a brain. And when it reaches adulthood, it gives all of these things up. In order to become itself, it stops moving, several of its organs are reabsorbed into its body, and the creature is transformed into something staggeringly different and new. Nature's capacity for transformation is humbling and awesome. A redwood grows from a seed smaller than a grain of rice. A river carves a canyon a mile deep into the rock. An off-brand variety of ape with a weak sense of smell and no natural defenses to speak of rises to become the most powerful and most dangerous animal on the planet. The world is constantly changing around us, and so sometimes change is necessary in order to adapt to new circumstances. One key example from our tradition is connected to the history of this congregation. By the 1940s, the Universalist Church of America had gone from a high water mark in the decades after the Civil War, when it was one of the 10 largest Protestant denominations in the United States, to a dwindling and struggling movement. Its core theological idea, that God is too compassionate to condemn any human soul to eternal torture in hell, had become so quietly popular among folks in competing churches that it no longer benefited from a monopoly on that principle. Its leaders sought a new trajectory for the faith, to meet and actively engage ideas already bubbling in their communities and around them, of free inquiry and wisdom beyond the boundaries of Christian texts and traditions. A universalism that might be more truly universal. As part of their efforts to conceive of a universalism for the second half of the 20th century, they recruited a relatively young, relatively promising minister from among the Unitarians. They charged him with founding a new congregation in Boston that would be a laboratory of sorts for the development of this transformation in Universalist theology and practice. That church became the Charles Street Meeting House. That congregation drew on wisdom from holy texts across the range of human religion, celebrated and explored the insights of science, and welcomed members equally whether they believed in one God or many or none. It was relatively short-lived, but it had a profound impact on universalism in America, and a decade or so later, on Unitarian Universalism, as the two traditions became one movement in the United States and Canada. The founding minister of the Charles Street Meeting House was Kenneth Patton, and the Unitarian congregation he was lured away from was ours. Adaptation is not always easy. It is often costly, but it is also frequently necessary in order to survive. Yet even more than just surviving, transformation allows us to do what we know must be done. I titled this reflection, Transform and Roll Out. Children of the 1980s, and perhaps some of you who raised children in the 1980s, may recognize that as the rallying cry of the Autobots, the heroes of the Transformers cartoon show, toy line, and multimedia enterprise. Very briefly, for those of us who did not get this context for free by staring into a screen for most of our early childhoods, Transformers is about two groups of alien robots who came to Earth in secret from another planet. They are naturally shaped like enormous metal humans, but those shapes are also innately plastic. By some underexplained mechanism, the actual underlying logic always comes down to, because they thought it would sell more toys. Their bodies took on alternate forms upon their arrival on our world in order to help them blend in here. So now they can switch back and forth, can transform between two ways of being, the original giant robot shape and that of some specific modern vehicle, usually a car or a truck, sometimes a plane or a helicopter or something more obscure. Why am I telling you this? It is admittedly just the cobbled together backstory of a crassly commercial entertainment product conceived to sell mass-produced plastic to my generation. But it also illustrates my point. In order for the Autobots to function in the world and to struggle for the safety and freedom of humanity against their nefarious adversaries, the Decepticons, our heroes must take on shapes that allow them to blend into human society. They have to transform before they can roll out. The clear moral understanding of what needs to be done often drives necessary transformation. Theodore Parker, who is almost certainly my pick for the most morally courageous of the white, Harvard-educated men who made up the majority of Unitarian clergy in the 19th century, was a conductor on the Underground Railroad. He hid and sheltered people escaping slavery on their way to freedom. Despite personally abhorring violence, he wrote his sermons with a gun on the table in front of him, prepared to use any means necessary to defend the lives and freedom of the guests in his home. Even a sad transformation, such as this, a peaceful person preparing himself to do great violence, can be a positive good as a necessary act of resistance to an intolerable evil. But transformation can also be beautiful. This is the third defense of its value that I have to offer you. There's a river in Colombia called the chrysalis. It flows through the mountains in an isolated area. Just getting to it is a bit of a schlep. If you don't already live nearby, it'll take a plane, a boat, and a good long hike. Most of the year, it's a pretty enough place to visit. The water is clear, the views are very nice, but for a few months, every summer, it transforms. You see, there's a rare plant called Macarenia clavigera that grows along the bottom of the chrysalis. And when the water gets just right, it blooms. The river explodes with color, rich, bright reds, verging into purples and pinks. The deep greens of other river plants, vivid blue from the water, the striking yellow of sandbanks, all swirl and spiral together like fireworks frozen in glass. The river is always a river, but for that handful of weeks, it becomes something more. I have served 3 different congregations as a minister in my career to date. Not one of those was still housed in its earliest building by the time that I reached them. The stories of those geographic transitions were all complicated and multifaceted, and each of them involved the quest for beauty. To construct or arrive at a space that inspired wonder and reverence. To make something beautiful and call it home. Now, my fourth and final reason for you today, that transformation is a positive force, is this. The possibility of transformation is so good because the impossibility of transformation is so terrible. We cannot and should not spend a whole month with the spiritual theme of transformation without making a direct acknowledgement of the precious lives and experiences of transgender people. People whose identities and lives are under threat due to scapegoating, ignorance, and bigotry. There is no single universal trans experience, and as a person who does not share that identity, my authority to speak about what it is like to be trans is nil. But for many of the trans folks whom I have the privilege of knowing, social transition, going from being known to the world by one gender to another, meant bringing the outward self into congruence with the inner self. Getting to be understood, sometimes for the first time, by other people in a way that affirms and reflects their own self-understanding. For those of us who are not trans and have no desire, therefore, to transition, it may be difficult to imagine holding that need to change one's outer presentation and possibly one's physical body as well. But far easier to imagine and to empathize with may be the experience of having a need in your bones which is withheld from you, or which you are punished and castigated for pursuing. A society which is open to the fact that some people want and need to change their names, their pronouns, their genders, their appearances, and or their private bodies, is so important because a society that does not accept and welcome such changes is profoundly destructive to the lives of people who ostensibly are a part of it. Unitarian Universalism has seen numerous transformations in its evolution across the centuries. Once we were separate but related ideological camps, battling for control of the institutional church in the early years of organized Christianity. Then we were Christian heretics, marginalized and maligned by the hierarchies of power that we lived under, but finding occasional tentative points of commonality with Jewish and Muslim communities that we encountered. Then eventually, in this country, we were free thinkers and advocates for social progress, though still restricting ourselves mostly to the social mores of the society around us. Still Christian exclusively, patriarchal almost entirely, and overwhelmingly white and Anglo-Saxon. True openness to truth and meaning beyond the boundaries of the Christian tradition, full inclusion of women as having equal value and equal ability to lead, the opening of our congregations to people of color, and even just to European immigrants not from Great Britain, all of this is mostly less than 100 years old. Unitarian Universalism as a single movement and identity, not just two great tastes that go great together, is even younger than that. Our full, explicit, institutional inclusion of gay, lesbian, and bisexual people is yet younger than that. Our collective welcome to trans, non-binary, and genderqueer folks is even newer still, and work that is still ongoing, as so much of the progress that I have just named is. The possibility of transformation of a person, a community, a religion, a nation, their openness to change is so important because without it, things cannot get better. If this faith that I was born into and have chosen to devote my life to had not transformed again and again across its history, there would be no place for me in it now as I am. I have to be grateful for the changes that wrought what I inherited, because without them, my life as it is would not be possible. I hope that by now, most of us are aware that our movement is presently in a process of discernment about rewording part of our national institutional documents, the part that includes the text that you likely know as the 7 Principles of Unitarian Universalism. The existing agreement between our congregations requires us to consider changes to this text periodically. They do not require change, only the consideration of change. If these changes are approved at our annual national governance meeting this June by a supermajority of delegates from our roughly 1,000 congregations, we will have new wording in the place of the familiar 7 principles. This proposed new wording names 7 values, with a few sentences to expound on the meaning and implications of each. Love is presented as the central value, with 6 others surrounding, expressing, and interweaving with it. I want to share with you here the words that may become a part of how we articulate Unitarian Universalism in the years ahead. So this is a quote from that perspective document. Transformation. We adapt to the changing world. We covenant to collectively transform and grow spiritually and ethically. Openness to change is fundamental to our Unitarian and Universalist heritages. Never complete and never perfect. If you're interested in participating in the decision-making surrounding this and other changes to the agreement between our congregations, we are entitled to a large number of delegates who are empowered to speak and to vote their consciences. This year's meeting will be entirely online, so there's no need or expectation to travel to participate. Please see Janet Swanson if you would like to serve in this way. Transformation can help us survive and makes it possible for us to do what our hearts tell us must be done. It can simply be beautiful. And the absence of even its possibility makes progress impossible. It may be, however, that even if you believe me, even if you agree, that does not quiet the part of you that is uncomfortable with change, that is anxious at the prospect of it, that is frightened by its implications. I do not know that I can or should take that fear away from you. But I can remind you that once you were, even before you were born. There was a time for each of us when we were all water-dwelling creatures, perfectly adapted to life inside the oceans of our mothers. The world was warm and soft and nourishing and comfortable. And then we were born. Remember, however surprised or dismayed you may be in the transforming course of your life, you have done it before. You have already gone without warning or explanation from living in water to breathing in air, from being swaddled in darkness to the shock of the light. The colossal, spectacular, and eternally transforming process called nature, of which you and I are each a part, has already enveloped you in its embrace. However severe any adjustment is for you now, you have already made one just as serious before.
I invite you into this time of giving and receiving, where we give freely and generously to this offering which sustains and strengthens our community here and also our outreach offering recipient. This week, our recipient is the Odyssey Project, an award-winning UW-Madison project that takes a whole family approach to breaking the cycle of generational poverty through access to education. It has empowered hundreds of low-income adults to find their voices and get a jump start at earning college degrees they never thought possible. Using a 6-credit literature course, faculty members introduce adults to great works of literature, philosophy, history, and art, and help them improve skills in writing and critical thinking. Some graduates of the program have journeyed from homelessness to UW-Madison degrees, or from incarceration to meaningful work in the community. There are multiple ways to share your gifts this morning. Baskets are now being passed here in the auditorium for cash or checks, or as you can see on the screen, you can donate directly from our website, fusmadison.org. You will find our text to give directions there as well. We thank you for your generosity and your faith in this life that we create together.
Thank you so much for that beautiful music. Each week we gather, carrying in our hearts the joys and losses of our days. We hold our own pain and celebration together with those of the ones we love. We share these here, knowing they are held gently, in care and in support and in love. Leah Sinclair asks us to light a candle for her friend Brittany and Brittany's sister Jackie, as Jackie is in what seem to be the final days of a struggle with brain cancer. We send our care and compassion to Jackie, to Brittany, and to Leah. Vicki Jones asks us to light a candle of grief and distress at the impact of next year's budget on our music program. We light a candle to observe the 34th anniversary this past week of the Capitol Crawl, the act of public protest in Washington, D.C., in which disabled activists abandoned wheelchairs, crutches, and other assistive devices to make their way up the 100 steps of the U.S. Capitol building as part of their demand for the passage of the Americans with Disabilities Act. We celebrate this act of visceral protest and the landmark in civil rights access for people with disabilities. The work of full access and inclusion continues. One of us asks that we light a candle in memory of beloved deceased member Michael May on this St. Patrick's Day. Guru Maagat. Eleni asks us to light a candle to acknowledge both her grief as she leaves behind her hospice career, as well as her joy as she steps into her new role in abortion work. We witness your transition in all of its complexity, Eleni. May the work that lies ahead for you be nourishing and meaningful. We light a candle for all those who feel isolated by grief, by chronic pain, by mental illness, and all others who are alone and lonely. To you, we extend our compassionate hearts. We light a candle of ongoing lament for the violence which plagues our world. Fervently, we yearn for peace here at home and around the globe. And we light a candle for all those joys and sorrows, hopes and dreams that remain unspoken in the silent sanctuaries of our hearts. I invite you now to turn with me both inward and outward as we enter together into an attitude of meditation and of prayer with these words of blessing from David Breeden. For the setting sun from an airplane window, for the rising sun from a train window after riding all night, for the rising sun and setting sun in directions that feel foreign, for the sunlight even when we are lost, for the times the heart has longed to be alone, for the times the heart has ached for another, for leaving in fear, for leaving in hope, for the way home and the way away, for the windows and the suns we have seen, for the windows and the suns we will see, for memory and forgetting, for the change that is our lives. Amen.
There is love holding us. There is a love holding all that we love. There is a love holding all we rest in His love. Now I invite you to rise in body and/or in spirit so we can sing together our closing hymn, number 354 in the gray hymnal, We Laugh, We Cry, verses 1 and 4. We laugh, we
we have any hope of transforming the world and changing ourselves, we must be bold enough to step into our discomfort, brave enough to be clumsy there, loving enough to forgive ourselves and others. May we, as people of faith, be granted the strength to be so bold, so brave, and so loving. Blessed be. Go in peace. Please be at rest for the postlude.